If you are SQL Server DBA and you are working with always on, chances are you must have faced sometimes latency between the replica servers. It could be because of network, maybe someone is running a big load on some database, or maybe a re-indexing job is running over the weekend. Now, we can definitely take a look here, as you can see on the dashboard, and see if everything is running fine or not. It is not always possible to do that. So what if we could configure some kind of a dependable monitoring so that whenever there is any kind of latency between the two replica servers, we get notified by an email with some necessary details. Also, if for some reason if it gets resolved, we are again notified saying that the latency has been cleared. Now, if you Google search about latency in always on, you will come across this very good article on sqlperformance.com, and here you will find a really good query that queries some DMBs and extracts some really good information. I am using this query, but I have modified it a bit. If you run this query, you will see a lot of things. Most of them, they are useful depending upon how you troubleshoot the reason behind the latency. I've created this script some 1 year ago, so I'm not writing it from scratch, but I'll explain you what it does step by step. If you see here, I have removed some of the columns which I didn't find very useful for me, at least not in the alert. I've also added one column. I want to know exact time when the latency has been fetched, because what happens sometimes the alerts, the mail server, it gets delayed. So if you get an email at 2 o'clock, doesn't mean the latency started at 2 o'clock itself. It could be just 2 minutes earlier maybe. So I want to have that. You see here, these are all the same DMBs that are used. After that, I have also filtered it out. I want that if the replica server is in synchronous commit mode, any lag greater than 0 seconds, it should be reported to me. Or if it is in asynchronous mode, then, and especially in a remote data center with a lot of network lag, even 2 minute delay is okay, depending upon again how many transactions per minute are running in the database. And the third condition, if you see, it says when the synchronization state is not synchronizing. If the replica is in synchronous commit mode, it will be in synchronized state, as you can see on this A node. Now, I do not have asynchronous replica right now. I just have two replica servers on my VM network. This is GGNDB001A and B. These are two replica servers for me. If it is an asynchronous commit mode replica, then it will say synchronizing, but it should never be not synchronizing. If it is, then I should be notified. So these are the three conditions of filters. Then this alert will get generated. Okay, some ordering. So what I'm doing, I'm inputting all of this information from the query into a table called latency. I'm putting it into a separate database. It is good to have a separate database for all kind of administration work, DBA in my case. So this table is latency. Now, what happens in any kind of these alerts, you have to poll or you have to run it very frequent, every minute or every 2 minutes. In my case, I'm running it every 2 minutes. Now, what happens if some issue happens every 2 minutes, you are fired lots of emails, and that is totally unnecessary on the mail server, on the SQL server, even on your mailbox. Whenever such kind of alerts are created, my attempt is I should be notified only with one single alert, and that should give me the enough information that okay, there is something that needs my attention. That said, I'm creating another table that is called existing L or existing latency. So suppose if there is a latency in one particular database in one particular replica server and it continues. So after 2 minutes, when it will again show, I shouldn't be bothered. It should not shoot me another email. For that, I'm using another table called existing L, and there I will keep historical information about these latency. about these latencies. Now, initially, when we will run it first time, the table won't be there. So if it is not null, that means if it is there, then what should happen? Okay, so initially the existing latency table will not be there. So if you see in this condition, it will be false. Table will not be there. So the logic will go from this if to else here. In that case, if this existing latency table is not there, I'll select the latency into existing table. Okay, this will happen first time when any latency would be monitored. First time whenever this will run, it will be created. On subsequent runs, this condition would be true and logic would come from this if to inside. Okay, so here there's something to notice. Okay, what I'm doing, suppose if there is one more database which is facing latency, that should be recorded into the existing L. The latency has current data. Existing L, this has historical data. Suppose there was one database in the existing one. There was, okay, so let's understand this way. Suppose there was latency in one database at say 2 o'clock. After some time, the latency creeped into another database. Now what will happen? That information from the latency would be inserted into the existing L. And how it will do that? It will create a unique column by combining the replica server name and database name. For any particular always on group, the replica server name and the database name, combining these two, that will create a unique column. So by comparing that, I'm saying that it should not be in existing L. So that means that particular information is additional in the latency, current snapshot of latency that would be inserted. Now, when this happens, I've also created a flag that will just be on, off, 0, 1. And whenever we create flags, it is a good practice to declare the data type as bit. So whenever some extra column in the table that will indicate latency in some additional database is inserted, this flag would be set to 1. And initially I declared it as 0. Okay, we will use this flag later on. Similarly, suppose after 10 minutes the latency was in 2 databases, but somehow after some time one database got freed from latency. Now it is in only one database. So here I am comparing that record. It is not there in latency. In historical table there is a record of latency, but in current table it is not there. So in that case I would want to delete it. Again, if any such thing happens, I would set this flag to 1. Okay, this one we already covered. Now let's see what this flag does. If this flag is 1, that means some data is changed in existing L, or current state of latency has been changed. So what I'll do, if it is added, what will happen if this table is not empty? Okay, select star and exists. That means there is some latency has been added. In that case, I would create an alert and give the subject latency occurred, priority high. And again, whenever we use these kind of flags, once this logic comes to part when the flag is set, we have to reset it. These are some basic debugging. Never use debugging, just use print. Okay, similarly, when column is deducted, we will check if this table is empty, corresponding else of this if it is empty, that means all the latency has been cleared, and with a similar subject the mail would be sent. Now here is something I'm using. Whenever we see these alerts, especially when a table data is there, it is not in very readable form. We would want to convert it into HTML rather than plain text. I could have done that using the HTML by formatting this table column by column here itself, but it takes time, and maybe we want to reuse it everywhere. So from this GitHub URL, I've copied this stored procedure, that is converts a table to an HTML. You give the table name, you set the formatting, and then it gives output into an HTML. So this HTML variable will contain the HTML code of this data. And luckily in this stored procedure, as we send DB mail, we have an option to send the body as HTML code, but inside the email it will convert to HTML as we do in browser. So again, these are my mail settings. I'm using Gmail in my server as I didn't configure the mail server yet in my environment. So that's pretty much it. Now it could be a bit confusing because of these many nested ifs and also using a flag. However, it is good to foster a cleaner execution, and also it is not very lengthy. Just few things that are a bit different and that has to be kept in mind. First things, I'm updating the historical table based on the current table, and by checking if there is some additional record in the current table or a record has been deleted in the current table, and accordingly I'm maintaining the historical table, that is existing existing latency. What happens if we create some kind of latency or if the database got out of sync? Also, entire this script I'm running in a job. Let me show you that. So I called this job as always on latency monitoring. If you take a look, schedule is it runs every 2 minutes, and if we see in the step, it's the same script. So let's see how it works. To create some kind of latency, we can do it in many ways. Very obvious way is to do a test. There are lots of third-party tools available. However, a simple script can do a part, and I have tried to create kind of script. I'm creating a very large table with 100 columns. Let me first drop this table. Okay, so if I want to create a table with say 100 columns, now I'm not gonna type the entire line. If you take a look, create table and then column 1, column 2, column 3, it is kind of a repeatable pattern, and that we can easily generate in a loop. Starter part I have created, and then column and the name of the column I am appending with the counter. So column 1, column 2, like that. Also it is column name is varchar, while this counter is int, so we have to convert it. Length I have fixed 36 because I'm generating a random string from a new id function, and that is of 36 characters. Okay, so let's first create the table. If we run this, it will give us the create script of the table. So I'm creating in adventure work. Okay, in the end we have to format a bit. Okay, this just created a table with 100 columns. What I'll do, I'll insert this table with multiple records. Now again, for inserting 100 columns, typing 100 times is just useless. So again we'll create a loop. We will divide the insert script, the fixed part, and then the repeating pattern. It would be the new id function I'm using, that is generating id. If we run this, it will give us an insert script. We have to fix it at the end. If we run it, it should run fine. Okay, now I want to run this insert script in a loop. Okay, so 100 columns, they are getting updated with a random string, and I'm running that insert in a loop. So that should create some good kind of load. So this is the loop I'm using. I have already prepared it in advance, so I would be just running it. It's simple, just 1 to 100 times I'm doing this. So let's run it 100 times, and it's gonna take a while. Okay, so it is started. Now if we take a look at our always on, soon we will see. Right now it is not showing much. So these two replica servers, see here, now it is showing estimated recovery time. Similarly, redo queue, it is showing. So redo queue is the amount of log that is still not has been redone. Similarly, send log is send log queue is from the primary that is still not sent to the secondary. These are few things we can monitor the latency, but again this is for live. Since these two replica servers, they are in synchronous mode and they are at in VM environment, so no network latency or anything. Even with this kind of test, it is not creating that much of a latency. A reason could be because lots of converts are there, so it is mostly using CPU rather than IO or something. It is not creating a lots of logs. However, there are lots of ways we can see if it is the latency is being monitored. One thing could be if we take a database out of HDR, if we suspend the data movement. Okay, so let's try to do that. I'll do that on the secondary, that is B node. We can do it from GUI, but what happens when we click on GUI or GUI? What happens? You see here, first is it suspends the data movement and then it updates the object explorer. So because of that, it takes some time. So we'll do it using commands. Very simple command, alter database and search HDR suspend HDR resume. So we'll suspend the adventure works on which we are running the query, and it is on B node. So now if you take a look here, let's refresh it. See here, now it is out of sync. Even it is showing estimated data loss of 9 seconds, and it will continue to increase. Now what will happen, it is approx 5:37 a.m. So within 2 minutes we should be notified that a database is not in sync and there is a latency in the always on group. So let's take a look at my 5:37. Okay, so job has just ran at 5:38 and soon we should be notified by an alert. Okay, so as we can see, the alert is here, and if we take a look at here, it says latency on server, so we get notified about the server. Then it shows the detail, it is on B replica server, node B, and the database name is this, latency is approx this much second. So this information is sufficient for us to take a look in case something happens. Now if you go back at the server, again this estimated data loss would get increased. And also let me just stop this kind of test. It will keep on increasing until we bring the database again in data movement. Okay, so we will just resume it. Again it will take some time because some delay has already occurred, so that will be recovering. However, it will take some time to get into. See, now it is 1:49 and similarly it will go. If we send this email using this script rather than wait for job to run every 2 minutes. So one thing to notice here, see, we have already notified about AdventureWorks database on this particular replica server. So this script didn't bother to send me another email. Now, if I suspend another database and then run this script, it will send me an updated email because now there is latency in one of the more databases. So if we take a look at here, see, we have another email and now it will list both the databases on replica server B. Now how about bringing them up? If we take a look at here, both of them would be okay, one we already recovered and another one is in suspended data movement mode. Okay, so we will bring them up. Here we go. Now let's send us another email. Okay, another email sent. Let's see what it says. It should be coming soon. Gmail, come on. Yeah, so a very small notification that latency has been cleared. This is it, a very handy thing. Now one more thing that I want to highlight you, this particular script, let me show you again. Now if you run it on a primary server, it will show you all the replica servers. Now if you change it to secondary, that would be B node. Now it is showing information only about B replica. This script should be running on prime replica server if we want to get notified about all the replica servers. Right now it is running on A. What if it is fails over to B? Now that job should be running on B node. Most of the DBAs that I have talked to, they are doing what we say as they're adding one step in each job. That step checks if the current server is primary or not. If it is, then the job proceeds. If it is not, then the job stops there at step 1. That is okay way, but suppose if there are hundreds of jobs and you have to edit each of them, that is not a very efficient way. In my production server, I have implemented another way that is not as messy, that you have to edit each job. So if you are interested to know about that way, then please let me know in the comments and I'll try to make another video on that. Thanks for watching. Make your databases healthy, make yourself healthy as well. Take care. Bye bye.